So there I was, minding my own business, just leaving shul like anybody does after davening. And a younger man came over to me, actually from Lakewood. I was in Borough Park at the time, where I live. And he came over to me after davening, and he's not one of the people that I'm working with here in Lakewood, in my office here, but just approached me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" So I always try to be polite if someone approaches me that way. Not like a policeman I once met in the park. I had a question about some traffic issue, and I approached him and I said, "Excuse me, officer, can I ask you a question?" And he turned to me in a typical New York style, and he said, "You already did." So I ignored it and asked him whatever my question was. But I try to be polite when someone approaches me that way and asks me a question, and I gave him a standard answer, which is, you can ask. I don't know if I'll be able to answer, but you can certainly feel free to ask. So the question he asked me was, he said he has a son, 10 years old, and he's trying to be mechanech him, and the 10-year-old boy, it seems, screams a lot at home. And the father would like to correct that bad midah of his son. So I was prepared with my standard answer of how I would answer a question like that. But before I had a chance to answer, he went on and explained that there was more to this question than just that. He said, so he spoke to his son about it and wanted to address the issue with him. And then his son turned to him and kind of stopped him in his tracks. And his son said to him, "Yeah, but mommy's always screaming." So he didn't know what to answer. And he asked me what should I have answered.
He agreed. So
I said to this younger man, "Well, let me ask you something. Is it true? Is his mother screaming a lot?" So he kind of sheepishly smiled, and he said, "Yeah, but she's working on it." I says, "Let me get this straight now. So what you're really asking me is, how can you get your son to listen to what you say, but not what you do?" That's really what you're asking, isn't it? So he gave me another sheepish grin and didn't know what to say. I said, "Look, a lot of people would like to be mechanech their children to follow what they're telling them, but not follow the way they're acting. Let me ask you something. Let me ask you a question," I said to him. "What would you consider to be the most important thing a child has to learn to get anywhere in life? The most important thing. Of all the things children learn, what's the most important thing?" So he was kind of scratching his head for a minute. And I said, "Well, I'll tell you how Rav Shamshon Hirsch answers that question. He says the most important thing that any child needs to learn to get anywhere in life is to learn how to walk on 2 feet, not just crawl, but to walk. Imagine if someone never learned how to walk. Literally, how far would they get in life? Not very far. They have to learn that even before they talk. They have to learn how to walk. So how does a child learn how to walk? They can't talk yet. Does the parent sit them down and give them a mussar shmooze about stop this crawling around business? You have to get up on 2 feet and walk. Do we send them to a special walking cheder or a play group where they're supposed to learn how to walk? Do we give them instructional videos or coloring books to show them how to walk? How do we mechanech children how to walk? So Shamshon Hirsch says very simply, we teach children how to walk on 2 feet by doing it ourselves. The kid sits there in his crib or in his playpen or on the floor, and he's watching all day long, seeing how adults are walking back and forth on 2 feet. And he thinks to himself, that looks like a better way of getting around than I'm doing. Yeah, I'm pretty efficient with the crawling on the floor, but that looks so much better. And then the child thinks, I think I'm going to try that myself. And he pulls himself up, and he stands up, and he feels the power of standing on 2 feet. And he screams, and he plops down, and then he tries it again, and then he takes one step, and everyone gets excited, and he puts another step, and then he starts copying what he saw. And that's how he learns to walk. If you want to teach midos, you don't teach midos with a mussar shmuz or a lecture. The way to teach midos is by modeling, and the child imitates your midos. Now you can't expect to teach your son midos if you're not modeling it yourself. You and your wife together have to be modeling it. Now, that's what I said to this younger man. But that was a question that really got me thinking. And it reminded me of a tremendous vort that Rav Shimon Schwab says in the parsha of Manoach in Shoftim. Now, if the parsha of Manoach sounds familiar to you, even though you're not big Nach students, it should be, because it's the haftarah that we learn in Parshas Naso. The whole parsha of Manoach and how the Malach came to his wife and said he's going to have a son, and the Malach tells her that she has to avoid eating anything that has to do with grapes, not to drink any wine, and she has to avoid any davar tameh, and the child is going to be a nazir mibetin. And she comes and tells Manoach, this is what's going to happen. And Manoach has this tremendous kasha, but the Malach didn't tell us what to do with the child. Well, wait a minute. The pasuk says the Malach told his wife exactly what to do with the child. What's the kasha? And not only that, he says, but maybe Hashem will have to daven to Hashem. They should send the Malach again to tell us what to do. The Malach just told your wife what to do. What's the shaila? And not only is the shaila sound crazy, but Hashem answers his tefillah and sends the Malach again. And then the Malach comes and he says, what are we supposed to do with the child? And the Malach says, he's going to be a nazir mibetan. Oh, thank you very much. We have to offer a korban. The Malach goes up in the korban, and Manoach thinks they're going to die because they saw the Malach. His wife reassures him. That's the end of the parsha. And Shimshon HaGibur is born. Now, Rav Schwab asked a gewaltige kashas on this parsha. He said, what was Manoach's question? The Malach already came and told them what to do with the child. And then Hashem sends the Malach again. Why? He already told them what to do. And the Malach came and just repeated himself. And the Malach said, oh, that's terrific. Now we know what to do. We have to thank you. What's going on here? So Rav Schwab answers very beautifully, explains as follows. Manoach's question was, the Malach came and told his wife that the child is supposed to be a nazir mibetan, and she also has to avoid drinking wine. But he's allowed to drink wine. The Malach only said she couldn't drink wine. The Malach didn't say he couldn't drink wine. And Manoach is saying to himself, wait a minute, how's this going to work? I don't understand this. I have to raise my son to be a nazir, but I'm going to drink wine? I'm going to sit there at the table, I'm going to have grape juice, I'm going to make kiddush, and he can't have any? I can have and he can't? And he'll ask me, why not? I say, you're not allowed to, and I'm drinking wine. How's that going to work? My son is going to think I'm a hypocrite. How's that going to work? How am I going to be mechanech him? I don't understand this. Rabbana Shalom, please send that Malach again to explain it to me. The Malach comes, and he says, Manoach, you're right. You can't be mechanech your child to be a nazir if you're not a nazir. You also have to be a nazir. Oh, Manoach says, now I understand. I'll be a nazir, he'll be a nazir. It makes sense. Like father, like son. He'll copy what I'm doing. I won't drink wine, he won't drink wine. That makes sense to me. And he can be medayik in the psukim. Rav Schwab points out. When the Malach came the first time, the Malach says, Ata, hishamri na al tishti. You, feminine, don't drink wine. V'shecha. V'al tochli kol tameh. You shouldn't drink any wine. Then Manoach says, I don't understand. He didn't tell us what to do with the child. The Malach should come again. She repeated what he said. The Malach said, Al tochli davar tameh, al tishti yayin. So Manoach davened to Hashem that the Malach should come again. The Malach came again. And Manoach said, Ma yeh mishpat hanar ma'aseh. What should we do to the child? How am I supposed to be mechanech him? How is this going to work? I can't be a hypocrite. Vayomer malach Hashem el Manoach mikol asher amarti el isha. Everything I said to your wife that only applied to her, you're right. Tishamer, you should also keep it. You have to be a Nazir also. You can't be a hypocrite. If we want to be mechanech our children, we can't expect them to listen to what we say and not listen and not watch what we do. We have to understand they're going to be watching us, and we want to teach them. We have to model the behavior that we want them to have. So let's go back to that poor younger man that asked me the kasha as I was coming home from shul. So what did I tell him? So what should he answer his son if his son says, but mommy yells also? Why are you criticizing me? So I told him what he really should say to his son is, you're right. It's not appropriate to be yelling. It's not the right thing. And mommy shouldn't be doing it either. But she's working on it. She's working on herself. And I want you to work on yourself also. You shouldn't be screaming either. Now, I don't know if it satisfied that younger man, but he thanked me very much for the sidewalk consultation. But I was thinking some people might react differently and say, what kind of answer is that? I'm supposed to say that to my child? That's admitting that I'm not perfect, that my wife isn't perfect. We have faults. I could hear people saying to me, wait a minute, what kind of eights is that? We have room over here. You can come in. You can come in this seat. I'm more comfortable if everyone's sitting. Okay. So, some people might say, listen, I have to be the authority in my home. My children have to respect me. The only way they're going to respect me if they feel I'm doing the right thing. I can't admit that I've made a mistake. I can't say that my wife has made a mistake, that we're not doing things properly. There has to be a certain derech eretz in the house. There has to be a certain kavod for parents. There has to be a certain authority. I can't answer that. That's not the right thing to answer. So in cases anyone who thinks that way, or might have a havamina to think that way, there's 2 points that I want to make. And that is that when parents try to portray to children that they're perfect and that they never make any mistakes, and the child has to work on himself, but the parents don't need any improvement, then the child could think, when they discover that it's not like that the parent is being hypocritical. And sometimes that can even reflect Chalila on Yiddishkeit itself. Now I know one family that I was working with a number of years ago where the father had this attitude that you have to do what I say. And he didn't feel he had to model the best behavior, although he tried to hide certain things from his family. And one thing he was very makpid on, there should be no newspapers. Children shouldn't be reading newspapers. It's bittul zman. They have to be learning, no newspapers. Now this is before Hamadiyah and Yeted. Maybe there was only the Jewish press at that time, I don't know, and the Jewish Observer, but didn't want any newspapers. So there were no newspapers in the house. Maybe today he would have allowed a Yeted or a Hamadiyah or Mishpacha, but in those days they didn't have those magazines. So, Bach was in Mesivta, no newspapers. Now, he knew that his parents were makpid, that he should never use their bathroom. So, there were other bathrooms in the house. He used the other bathrooms. But his parents weren't home, and the other bathrooms were occupied by his siblings. So what would be so terrible if he used his parents' bathroom? After all, they weren't even home. They wouldn't know about it. So he went one day into his parents' bathroom, and I think you can guess already what he found there. He found on the floor a New York Times. Oh, no newspapers, right? No newspapers. We're not allowed to have any newspapers in this house. But you're reading the New York Times in the bathroom. That's why we can't go into the bathroom. Now I understand why we're never allowed into your bathroom. Because it wasn't just once, that you're reading it all the time. And you're making such an issue that we shouldn't have the newspapers. So he obviously had good reason to think his father was being a hypocrite. And his father was being a hypocrite. But that kind of disillusionment went so deep that this young man went off the derech, completely off the derech. Now, I'm not saying it was just because he discovered that his father had a New York Times in the bathroom. Maybe he could have survived that. There were other issues also. There were other factors that led to it. It was a complicated case. I'm not getting into all the details now. But what I want to bring out simply is that this certainly was a contributing factor to his going off the derech. The hypocrisy he saw in his home certainly wasn't the car of him. And it made him question about other things if he has to take it so seriously either. Now, another damaging effect that kind of attitude that the parents are always perfect and have to portray that they're perfect can have on children is it sets an unrealistic standard. Now, I know another family where both parents, father and mother, are rather perfectionistic, and not only do they not admit any faults or any errors, they try to be perfect in every way, and in many ways are successful. But this attitude that we have to be perfect and everything has to be 100% all the time, without any exception, sets a standard for children that can literally destroy them. Just about every one of the children in that family had some psychological issue, some more than others. One child was almost completely, severely disturbed, but the family kind of straightened things out just at the nick of time, and I think this kid would have become psychotic if there wasn't intervention at an early age. He was evaluated with a full battery of psychological tests, and there was borderline psychosis in some of his responses, and Baruch Hashem, he's living a normal life now. But what I wanted to bring out is that when parents try to establish themselves as being perfect and set a standard of perfection that the children can never reach, that feeling that they're never going to be good enough or never accomplish enough or never be perfect can break a child, and sometimes it can break them almost irreparably. Now, not only is a child hurt very seriously when parents try to portray an image that they're perfect and they never make mistakes and that everything they do is right all the time, but when parents can say to their children what I advise this young man to say to his 10-year-old son, that his wife shouldn't be yelling and that she is working on it and he wants him to work on it also. To acknowledge failure is a tremendous gift to children. Why? Why is that a gift to children? I'm showing that my father's not perfect. I want them to look up to me. What kind of gift is that? I'm hurting them, right? No, wrong. You're helping them. How am I helping them? You're helping them because you're teaching them that it's okay to be human. You can fail. You can be imperfect. It doesn't mean you're a zero. It doesn't mean you have no worth. It doesn't mean there's no hope. You're teaching them how to deal with imperfection. It's not something you embrace. It's not something you want. You want to overcome it. But you're showing them a model of how to deal with mistakes. There are some children who can't accept any imperfection in themselves, so they have to deny it, or they have to fight and argue. They always have to win the game. They can't accept if the teacher took off a point. They get all bent out of shape. They can't deal with any adversity. They can't deal with any disapproval. You can never correct them. You can never tell them they did anything wrong. And children like that can't grow, they can't learn, they can't develop, they can't succeed in life. How do children learn how to deal with their own imperfections, their own mistakes, their own need for improvement? If the parents taught them. And if the parents can admit their own failures, their own imperfections, they're modeling for their children. This is how it looks when a person isn't bent out of shape, when a person says, yes, it's not the right thing to be shouting all the time. And yes, it's not right that mommy's always yelling. And you're right, she shouldn't be yelling. And she's working on it. And she admits that this is an issue. And she wants to improve in this area. And she is trying. And you have to try also. That's a tremendous gift to a child. And when children learn how to accept their own failings, then they can take criticism from a Rebbe, from a teacher. They don't always have to win the game. They can let their friends win the game sometimes, and they can draw to be more healthy and productive and successful adults. So let's just try to keep that in mind. And when it comes to teaching midos, we're trying to get our children to improve their midos, to remember that the best way to teach midos is not through lectures or schmoozing, it's through example. And to try to be the best example we can for our children, and to hope to be mechanech them to be proper Ovdei Hashem and successful human beings. I just want to remind everybody that the next Vaad, B'ezras Hashem, will take place in 4 weeks, which is Sunday night, December 4th. I want to again remind everybody that if you'd like to contribute questions or topics or suggestions, anyone who's watching at home would like to contribute a suggestion or a question, you can email it to the Vaad at chinuchvad123@gmail.com, and a very capable and able coordinator, Reb Meir, will forward the questions to me, and it's an opportunity for anyone who has a question. It can be submitted anonymously. I won't have to get your name. I won't even know who it is. If you have a topic or a suggestion or a topic, an issue that you would like us to address at a future Vaad, please feel free to do so, and you can also send your comments as well. So with that, we'll conclude. Thank you for coming, and I look forward to seeing you, B'ezras Hashem, next month. Have a good Chodesh.